Welcome back to another episode of Criminal Justice Corner. I am your host, Dr. Jennifer Matthews. Here at Criminal Justice Corner, we give you the real details surrounding the case, and just in case you find yourself in the same situation, we give you actionable advice that you can potentially get yourself out. Today, I have with me a very special guest, Amanda Lee. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me on here. My name is Amanda. I am an author. I've written 4 books, 3 of which are centered around domestic violence. I am a domestic violence survivor. About 5 years ago, I found myself in a situation that I never expected. I had, as I call it, the Instagram perfect family, but what was happening on the inside was not picture perfect. And one night, my ex-husband threatened to kill me and our children and burn the house down. And the police were involved. And I all of a sudden was thrown into a life going to court every other week that I was not expecting. And it was awful. It really was. And through it all, I survived it. I survived with my children. And I made lemonade out of lemons. Yeah, that's the expression. I always get confused. And I wrote a memoir about my experience, hoping that it helps other people. I found going through the criminal justice system very lonely as a domestic violence survivor. I found a lot of roadblocks, and I kept thinking to myself as I was going through each step, this is why people don't come forward.
Yes.
We don't feel supported. This is why people don't come forward. And I just thought, if I even sold like 3 books and that helped one person, then I did what I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
my memoir has helped many, many people.
Now, where can people find your book and what is the name of it?
Yes, absolutely. So my memoir is called One of the Lucky Ones, and I actually just wrote a new book. It's a fiction version of my story called Blue Coat, and they can find them on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and also on my website, which is author A.E. Lee.
Awesome. And you sent me those books, and I'm so very grateful for those books. So I definitely want the listening audience to make sure they go out and grab a copy as well. And you said that you had 5 years ago, you had the Instagram perfect life. What does the Instagram perfect life look like?
Oh, I had a little boy and a little girl, and they are, I mean, I know I'm partial because they're my kids, but they are the cutest things in the world. I mean, they're
Did
getting
you have a
older.
white picket fence?
Almost. I had a craftsman style, like huge house in Northern Virginia. Like we traveled, we posed in all the places, and I only post like, oh, look at my beautiful family. Look at my beautiful family. And inside the walls, I was being degraded every single day by words and sometimes physical violence.
Okay. Now, how long were you and your husband together at this time, the
We
5 years ago?
we were married for 7 years,
Okay.
together for 10.
So let's say prior to the marriage, were there signs? Because, people always say, well, there were signs you should have known. There were red
Oh yeah.
flags.
There
Were
were
there signs?
hundreds of red flags, but here's the thing: when you are in it, and I am an intelligent woman. I have
Okay.
2 master's degrees, like, so I understand the judgment that domestic violence survivors get, because it's like,
Hmm.
why didn't you leave sooner? It's easier said than done. When
Okay.
you are in a relationship and it doesn't start from day one, and it's a gradual. When you are in an abusive relationship, it's a gradual thing. It's not
Yeah.
like you go on your first date and the second date he's beating you. It is a
Right.
gradual to when you are in a full committed relationship, you are in love. Our abuse, I mean, there were signs of the verbal abuse a little bit, but it didn't
Okay.
get bad until we were engaged. And at that point,
Um,
it was like, okay, but like my parents are spending all this money on a wedding, and I'm 29 and all my friends are married, and I want to get married and I want to have children. Okay, he said he's never going to do it again. Let's hope this
but
is a fluke.
but he would.
Yeah.
Were the
Yeah.
kids born at that time?
No, no.
Okay. So
No.
you didn't feel like you needed to save yourself before it was too late, like before you had kids at that point?
It's it's almost like, someone described it to me one time and it made perfect sense. When you were in an abusive relationship, you were almost like not yourself. You're in a coma. You have blinders on. It's
Okay.
you want to believe that this is not going to happen again. It kind of catches you off guard. And then
Okay.
all of a sudden one day you wake up and
Okay.
you're like, I've lost myself and this is
Hmm.
actually happening. When you have to admit that this is what's happening, it becomes reality. So that
Um,
admitting this is happening is hard. It's like if you were in, if you're in a relationship with someone and your friends like hate them, and then you
yeah.
gotta admit like, all right, well maybe he is a jerk. Well, then it becomes reality. And the same
And then you
thing
have to
with
do something about it.
then you have to do something about it.
So, okay, you got the kids, the 2.1 kids, you have the house, you got the dog, the cat, the pet hamster, the
We have an
pictures.
answer.
The pictures are going up on
Mhm,
Instagram, Facebook,
mhm.
everybody is liking them. You're dealing with all of this abuse on the inside. One day he turns, he crosses the point of no return. What did that look like for you?
I mean, it was awful. It had been gradually building up more and more and more, and the build up was that I woke up. Like I said, I I remember distinctly. I was driving to work, and the
Mhm.
term gaslight had recently become like a thing.
A thing, yeah,
A
it's very,
thing,
yeah,
right? Like
blatant.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and I was listening to the radio show host describe gaslighting, and I had to pull over because I was crying so hard. And I was like, oh
Oh
my
my
god,
gosh.
this is happening to me. This is
Mhm.
because the thing with psychological abuse is they make you think that you're the crazy person.
They certainly do,
And
yeah.
I'm like, and I thought that. I thought
You
I
thought
no
you were the
one
problem.
I thought I was the problem. So when I realized it wasn't me, I started
Mhm.
tolerating a lot less. But it was
Okay.
also that, but the abuse was still there. So it was, how am I going to survive without this person? Not
Yes.
necessarily his like emotional support, but we had two children. I'm a
Yes.
teacher. We live in Northern Virginia, which is quite expensive to live in. I didn't think I financially could afford. And he also
Okay.
had spoken so poorly to me, my self-esteem. I didn't think anyone would ever want me.
Mm. Okay.
And so the buildup started to happen more and more. And I noticed the verbal abuse started turning towards our son, who was 5 at the time.
Oh
And
my.
that's when it really triggered me. And it was one night in August 3rd at 8:59 p.m.
Okay.
He came up. Our kids were little. They were showering together. He told them to get out of the shower. I said they could play longer. My son came down, like skipping down the stairs, was like, Daddy, I'm ready for bed. And he yelled, Go to bed, you little shit. And I went down and laid into him, and we had a fight, and it escalated from there. We wound up upstairs yelling at each other. He threw water at me, and then he got within an inch of my nose and told me that he was going to kill me. He was going to put a bullet in
Okay.
my head before the police even got there. And I grabbed my phone and I ran downstairs, and I stood at the
Mhm.
bottom of the stairs, and he mocked me. He was like, What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And
Oh,
I remember thinking, my kids are in bed. What am I going to do? I
right.
just ran downstairs and he's closer to the kids.
Then you are, yeah.
And he passed me on the stairs and said, F this. I'm going to burn the place down. I'm going to burn this whole place down. And he rounded the corner. And that's when I sprinted upstairs. I grabbed my kids. And as we were running out of the house, I turned back and he had a gas can in his hand.
Really?
Yeah. So we ran to our neighbor's house, who happened to be a police officer, and they let us in. And he peeled out of our
Driveway.
cul-de-sac, and I
Okay.
was on the phone with 911, and they sent a police car, well, several police cars, and
At that point.
at that point, and then we went from there. He was picked up, he was arrested. We had multiple protective orders for several
Okay.
years.
So
He
you didn't
was
go back after this.
no, to me that
Okay.
was the point of no return.
Okay. Threatening to kill you, the kids, burn the
Yeah,
house
and
down.
also I looked at it as my door of opportunity. That was my way out. I was
It
trying to
really
figure
was.
out
Yeah.
for months how was I going to get out of here?
With your
Because
kids.
with my kids, and they were so little, they were 5 and almost 4 at the time. And I
Okay.
was so worried of divorcing because in Virginia, it's a unification state. So they want both parents to have as much custody as possible. And I knew he would get 50-50, and I didn't think that was
Yeah.
safe for the kids.
Yeah. Because you know what he was capable of at this point.
Yeah. And they were too little to tell me what was happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you leave. What does that look like? So you have these protective orders. You guys are separated. The kids are with you. What does that
Mhm.
look like? The going back and forth to court. What does that look like for you?
It was awful. It was the scariest thing in the world to me. I had never been in a courtroom ever in my life until the day I had to go in and appeal to get a 2-week extension on the protective order.
Okay.
And we were in court like every other week because there were
Mhm.
criminal charges that the state put
Yes.
on him,
Yep.
because he threw water on me and there were visible signs that I was wet. So that was considered assault. So the state
Okay.
charged him. Um, so we were in and out of court for a while with getting protective order extensions until I was granted a permit one, which is not actually permanent. It's just 2 years, which it's hard to understand, like, the whole process. They're like, "You'll get a permanent order, but it's up in 2 years." I'm like, "Well, why do you call it a permanent one? Because that's not
Exactly.
permanent."
Yeah.
Um, and for the criminal charges, because I had never reported before,
Yep. This is
they
your first time ever speaking out on your behalf.
mhm, I remember distinctly the state attorney pulled me into a little conference room, and the police officer that responded the first time, and my attorney was there, and he spoke so fast and told me, "Well, we're going to give him first offender disposition." I looked at me like I was supposed to know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Well, what is that?" He's like, "Well, he doesn't have a criminal record, so um in a certain amount of years he'll be able to get it off of his record, and he's on
Yep.
probation." And I just looked at him.
You're like, no, I've been going through this forever.
I'm sorry, what? They're like, "No, it's better. You'll get child support." I'm like, I don't care about money. I want to make sure he doesn't kill me."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Well, he doesn't have a criminal." I'm like, "So because I didn't report this sooner, I'm now being punished?
Yes.
Like, how are you going to protect me?" And
Right.
we're like, "Well, you have the protective order." I'm like,
That's not good enough.
"No."
He's not
And
scared of a piece of paper.
yeah, what am I going to do? Hold it up to him and be like, "See, I have a protective order. You can put the gun down now."
Exactly.
And after that, so I had the kids the full time during that period. There was no contact. And then he slowly had visitation, supervised
Mhm.
visitation. But in that time period, no one tells you as a domestic violence victim that the scariest time for a domestic violence victim is when you leave.
That is so true. That is
Like,
so true.
I didn't know because
Because he
now.
feels powerless.
Exactly. He convinced one of our neighbors to give him access to a camera. So he was stalking me.
No.
He was watching me go in and out of the house, reporting. He was texting me about it. And I called the police every single time. And every single time, one police officer, and she was female. And I thought, yes, I got a female officer. She's going to totally do something, girl power. And she showed up and she's like, "Well, I can't do anything about a camera in someone else's house."
Did you talk to that neighbor? Like, what are you doing?
Um, yes and no. The neighbor is a little, well, my previous neighbor, I don't live there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when they heard, it was a small cul-de-sac, there were 7 houses. When they heard what happened, their response was, "I can't believe Amanda is breaking up her family."
Wow.
And I was like, did they not hear the part where he said he was going to kill me?
But not only that, let's just say you're breaking up your family. What part of I'm going to give him access to my camera helps the situation?
I don't know. I don't know what was said. I don't know the rationale.
Hmm.
They were always a little kooky, so I never really
Like it.
spoke to them a lot. But I mean, every time I called the police because he was stalking me,
Hmm.
it was a dead end. And then they would like add things to the protective order sometimes. So we go back to court. So it was like, you can't video surveillance her. You
Okay.
can't do this. I mean, our protective order, by the time we renewed it one time, it was like 7 pages long.
No way. How long are you going through this process, back and forth?
It was probably a good 2.5 years
Oh my gosh, that you're
because
being tortured with
we also
court.
had COVID, so everything was shut
Okay.
down for a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I
I
gotcha.
mean, and I remember talking to a police officer at one point when I started that summer, the summer after, I started getting threatening text messages on my phone. And I'm like, listen, I know it's either him or someone associated with him. And
Absolutely.
he's like,
Somebody's putting
well,
them up to it. Like he's
I
putting
can't,
someone up to it.
he's like, I can't do anything about it. And then the officer was like, you should have a code word. I'm like,
What?
what?
Who's
He's like,
that?
you should have code word with your friends and family. So if you're in danger, you can call them and use the code word. I'm like, do you hear the things you're saying to me? This is an
Isn't that what the
issue.
police are for?
You're telling me I need a code word, but you're also not doing anything to help protect me. Like, what?
That makes no sense to me.
No.
So you're going back and forth to court. It's 2.5 years later. What happens now? Is it the end? What happens?
I mean, no one believes it, but we're great co-parents now.
What?
I know. So during the process, we found out that he has a diagnosis of bipolar, and it's pretty severe. And bipolar is a spectrum, from what I understand, and he's on the pretty severe side. So
Okay.
he's taking medication, and he also has done a lot of therapy. Has done anger management.
Mm.
He literally did everything that was told or suggested to him to so he could be with the kids.
Okay.
We jointly saw a parenting, I forget what you call her. It was like
Therapist?
no, I was like, she was more like a mediator to teach
Okay.
us how to co-parent. She was kind of worthless, but the process together was good. I've done my work, and because we've both been able to do our work,
Okay.
we are actually really great co-parents at this point.
That is amazing. How old are your kids now?
They are 10 and 9.
Wow. So this has been a long time in the making, like
It
years.
has. I mean, it took a long, long time to get here, but we I'm really proud of how far we've come. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like this is my abuser. This is the man who
Hmm,
abused
hmm.
me. I still have PTSD symptoms from this. And
Okay.
if I had it my way, we would never speak again. But we have kids.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we both have tried to do the work that we need to. Our children have been traumatized enough. I
Hmm.
mean, my kids, they not only witnessed domestic violence, but they also they were a part of a really, really scary night. I mean, their mom comes running it, they hear screaming. Their mom comes running into the room and tells them they need to get up. We need to run to the neighbors, and we're running, and dad's screaming. I mean, they were
Traumatic.
little. Yeah, they were little, but
Mhm.
they remember that.
Wow. So have the kids gotten therapy? Have they received
Yes.
therapy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was
So
the first things I did.
are they like coping better now with everything?
Yes, my son has some anxiety, but
Okay.
um I don't know it's necessarily a result of the trauma he had. I have anxiety just in general too.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I don't know anyone who doesn't have some sort of anxiety.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, they both have seen and are seeing a therapist and have for the past 5 years.
Okay. I definitely think that's good though, because you never know what they're dealing with like under the surface. Like you said, it could be that or it could be something else. So
Yeah.
I always advocate for therapy in any situation,
Hmm.
period. So
Yeah,
I think
I
that's a
agree.
good thing.
Hmm.
Now, what does today look like for Amanda as a survivor, as an author? What does your life look like now as a mother? What does your life look like?
I mean, it's pretty sweet. I remarried a wonderful man.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah, he's
amazing.
great. He's great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He shows me what it means to be a partner. I never really had that with my ex.
Okay.
We're a team, and It's a it's a lovely experience.
Okay.
Um,
He's good with the
and
kids.
he's amazing with the kids. He has 5 of his own. So
A nice
my
blended family.
I now have 7 children, and my kids have, um, many brothers and sisters, and that is, it's a great way to grow up. It really is. And, it's a blended family. So there are moments where everybody loves each other and there's moments where everybody wants to kill each other. But I feel like that is
Absolutely.
just a general family thing. So it is,
Absolutely.
life is pretty good.
Now, let's say another person listening, another person is going through what you're going through. They're like in the thick of it.
Mm.
What would you tell them in this same situation that you experienced? What would you tell them if they're struggling? They're like, man, I want to get out. I'm living that same experience today. What would you tell them? What would be your advice to that listener?
My number one piece of advice is no domestic violence survivor, victim, whatever you want to call us, has ever regretted leaving.
That's
You
new.
never
Never heard that.
You never hear anyone go, "Oh, I should have gone back," or, "Oh, I should have stayed longer." No. It's always, "I
Mhm.
can't believe I stayed that long. I can't believe I didn't see these signs." So whatever you're doing, don't give up. No one ever regrets leaving an abusive relationship.
That is amazing. I've never heard that before, but you are 100% correct. I've
Mm.
never heard anybody say, I should have stayed,
Yeah,
so
right? No one's, "Oh, I should have put up with it more." No.
never. I've never heard those words uttered ever. I've heard, like you said, the most critical time is when you do leave. So I
Mhm.
always for me, my advice is if you decide to leave, to make sure that you have support because that is the most
Yes.
critical time. Make sure that you have things in place, different protections in place if you do decide to leave, because that is the most critical point and you don't know what they're capable of. So you don't want to be even more vulnerable than you've already been and put yourself in more danger than you have to be. So that
And
would be my
yeah.
advice.
And if you don't think you have a plan, you do actually. You do. Your plan is to leave, and every county in every state in America has resources for domestic violence victims to keep you safe.
Eh, Look at that. That's the
And
opposite
and
advice.
and to find them, it's mainly on like county courthouse websites, but also
Mhm.
domestic violence hotlines. All you got to do is Google.
Yes. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of domestic violence hotlines, and some of them are like national too.
Mhm.
Like if you Google like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, they can
Mhm.
connect you to places like in your local town, like your
Yep.
local area. So that's
Mhm.
that's very good advice too for the listeners who might not know, who are scared to leave, who are like looking for resources. The Domestic Violence Hotline can connect you to different resources if you think you don't have a way out. You can
Yeah.
come up with a plan and then execute that plan in a safe way. Because that's the
Mhm.
thing. We want you to be safe. We don't want you to, one, stay longer than you have to. Two, we don't want you to put yourself in more danger than you have to be.
Mhm.
Want everyone to get out safely, and we don't want you to put yourself, your kids' safety in jeopardy.
Yeah.
That's the plan. Now, one last thing before we wrap up this episode. How can people reach you again? I know you said your website, but I
Mhm.
just want to give it a little recap. How can they find your books? How can they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website, which is author.aelee.com. You can also find me on Instagram, which is author.aelee. It's
Awesome.
Aelee, sorry. I don't know what
No worries. Awesome. I want to thank you so much for being my very special guest today. You provided our listeners with so many valuable resources and tips. I know they're going to be so encouraged by your story. And I want to let everybody know that we are now on the Alive Podcast Network. So if you are not a member, make sure you subscribe today. Also, we're available on Spotify, YouTube, Pandora. So please make sure you're listening to us there, and we will see you or catch you on the next episode of Criminal Justice Corner. Thank you.
Thank you.